Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, we're all set to start in the next couple of minutes. So I request all of you to kindly settle yourselves down, and a small request, kindly keep your cell phones on silent. Thank you so much. Enjoy. Nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, check. All right, welcome ladies and gentlemen. A very good afternoon and welcome to Lodha Presents. Not this. Lodha Presents the Times of India Literary Carnival 2013. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our next session for the day. We had a previous session that was rather controversial, but nevertheless great. This session is very interesting and is titled Mills and Doom. Do romantic novels ruin it in real lives? We have Malavika Sarkar, Fahad Samar and Nandini Krishnan with us on the stage. Welcome. So a small introduction about everybody. Malavika Sarkar is a professor and vice chancellor of Presidency University. She's a Miltonist with special interest in the history of science. Her recent book, Cosmos and Character in Paradise Lost, was published by Palgrave Macmillan in June 2012. She is the founder-president of Center for Studies in Romantic Literature, that's CSRL, and continues to direct its international conferences. We also have Mr. Fahad Samar, established his company Bombay Talkies in 1993 and has since written, directed, produced scores of television commercials, corporate films, and award-winning telefilms and TV shows. He also writes on food, wine, and travel for the Upper Crust magazine, and his articles have appeared in a lot of magazines and newspapers, so welcome, sir. Thank you for joining us. And we have Nandini Krishnan. She's a writer, playwright, and a stage actor based in Madras, now is Chennai, the city that she grew up in. After working as a broadcast journalist in London and Delhi, she decided to freelance for print and web media and focus on her writings. She also reviews books and films for several publications. Her plays have been shortlisted for the Hindu Metro Plus Playwright Award in the past. Her first book, Hitched, The Modern Woman and Arranged Marriage, looks at the social context of arranged marriage in the urban and westernized India that most of us belong to. She's currently working on 2 novels and several plays. So ladies and gentlemen, I warmly welcome all of you on stage. Thank you so much for joining us. And may I please request the panelists to take over the session. Thank you and enjoy yourself. Check. Yeah.
Check? Yeah.
Check.
All right, thank you very much and welcome to this session, Malavika and Fahad. I was just thinking when I saw the title of this session and it said they wear their rose-tinted glasses, and I was thinking if someone were to hold us all at gunpoint and say, wear these, I was reminded of what Salman Khan said to Karan Johar, you know, ऐसी कोई gun बनी ही नहीं है. So, because Fahad's book, I think everyone marries either for money or progeny, like good-looking progeny, because they've got money but they don't have the looks. Or they've got new money and they want old money, whatever, dignity, so they marry into old money. My book is about arranged marriage, so obviously people who didn't fall in love. And with Malavika, it's a 200-page book on a book which speaks about the most unromantic things, I think. You know, the purgatory, and Adam and Eve start fighting as soon as they sleep together. So I think basically it's a collection of the most unromantic stories. And somehow we've been asked to wear rose-tinted glasses. So I think I'm going to start off by asking for opening remarks on the idea of love. Now you, Fahad, as far as I know, are a happily married man. And you didn't marry either for money or progeny. So maybe I should start off by asking you about what fostered your idea of love. Was it that Mills and Boon novels that you sneaked a peek into put you completely off it? Or what was it which gave you your idea of romance, love?
No, I mean, Mills and Doom is right, because Mills and Boon's Perish the Thought. I remember, you know, I was always a very interested in literature and for years only read literature in terms of the classics and I'd never read any sort of commercial fiction, and I was spending a month in Mathiran at our family home, and my mother, I'd run out of books to read, and my mother had a Mills and Boons, and I picked it up in desperation because I needed something to read, and I remember at the age of 13 being mortified at reading this Mills and Boons and thinking how completely inane this is, and thought, oh my God, never again. But having said that, obviously these are things that shape you in ways also in terms of this ridiculously idealized version and notion of what a man should be, what a woman should be, the simpering, cowering girl, this strapping Fabio-like man, with unreasonable pecs and exceedingly well endowed in terms of money and size and everything else. So quite preposterous, so yes, what these things did is certainly shaped my thinking in what love shouldn't be, and I'm delighted to say 18 years after being happily married, I still hold on to strong notions of love.
Great. Thank you. When you spoke about Mills and Boon, I kept thinking about, in my teenage when I didn't go after Mills and Boon exactly, but I had an older cousin who'd leave these lying around, and obviously it was forbidden because my mother said don't read those. So obviously I went and read most of them. And they always refer to a man's organ as his manhood. So I think when it comes to well endowed, that was probably the most significant aspect.
Yeah, manly arms and his manhood. There's a lot of, manpower on display, and no doubt, yes.
Right. Now, if I could turn to Malavika. First, before I ask you for your opening remarks, I think I should start off with the most offensive question a Milton scholar can be asked. Is it true that Milton wrote Paradise Lost the year he got married and Paradise Regained the year his wife died?
Well, that's a marvelous myth, but it's very, very wide of the truth. So, unfortunately, no, it would make a great story, but can't be substantiated.
Right. Okay. So now I'm going to ask you a more specific question. You've spoken in your book, Cosmos and Character in Paradise Lost, about how Adam and Eve are not static characters, and they are evolving characters, and in fact, their relationship forms the dramatic core of Paradise Lost. Because everyone's pretty much the same. God is either this great guy or a despot, depending on how you look at it. And Satan is, of course, evil or a rebel, depending on where you come from. But they are also portrayed as having a real relationship. They are actually attracted to each other even before the original sin. So do you think Adam and Eve, the story according to Milton, was maybe the world's first romance? And could you speak about the tradition of romance in literature since then?
Yes. In fact, when I was asked to come to this literary carnival, which I'm thoroughly enjoying, I wondered why I was being asked, because I'm essentially a vice-chancellor, an academic with an interest in history of science. But then, of course, I'm also the founder president of the Center for Studies in Romantic Literature, which is, as we all know, literature of the late 18th and early 19th centuries. But when I started the Center for, so I thought maybe it's the Center for Studies in Romantic Literature, which sort of, drew the attention of the organizers to me. And when I started the Center for Studies in Romantic Literature, which was about 20 years ago, and it was an autonomous center, I had to get private funding. And I went to CEOs and MDs of various companies in Kolkata asking for money to fund the library. I remember I was 20 years younger then, looking at me with great interest. Oh, romantic literature, without realizing that romantic literature meant late 18th and early 19th centuries. But yes, I have been running those conferences, but my main interest is in Shakespeare and in Milton, which is what I've taught all my life. And yes, the story, it's really two questions you've asked me. And yes, the story of Adam and Eve, as in Paradise Lost, is perhaps the archetypal love story. It's a great love story. And if anyone cares to read Paradise Lost carefully, and I know it's a very, very daunting task, but even if you read it flipping through like a bestseller, it's an amazing story, especially the way that Milton shapes Eve's character, and indeed Adam's. And it's a great relationship, and there's nothing ideal or static about it. So it's a great story. But the whole business of putting love into fiction, of course, goes back at least, to the 15th century. And the great work on love is by Plato, and its modification by Ficino in the 15th century, from where we all get the notion of Platonic love, which in its technical sense is not so far removed from the body as we tend to imagine when we use the term Platonic love loosely. And then there is, of course, Shakespeare, very clear-headed in what he said. And as I read Shakespeare today and look at today's topic, which is, Mills and Doom, and think that essentially, what does Mills and Boon do? And I confess to having read a couple of those books in my young days. I was very impressed with them. If you don't take them too seriously, if you consider them as purely entertainment, they are entertainment, but don't take them too seriously. And one finds that, what they create is an archetypal man who is, within quotes, tall, dark, and handsome. Although, of course, in India today, with all those fairness creams for men, no longer dark, but anyway, archetypally tall, dark, and handsome. Someone who's also a kind of cross between a sinful Byronic hero and a gallant chevalier, who also has the power to create a belief in a happy ever after. Now, this is a very tall task, but that is what books like Mills and Boon have tried to do. And for men, the archetypal woman is, again, perhaps best described in Milton's own words, taking it from another poem called L'Allegro, where he talks of women as being, a particular woman as being buxom, blithe, and debonair. In other words, a curvaceous goddess, but who is also a good cook. So, these are the kinds of combinations that are stereotypically in the minds of people set by the Mills and Boon kind of story, which is entirely counteracted by someone like Shakespeare. If you remember Midsummer Night's Dream, where he says the lunatic, the lover, and the poet are of imagination all compact, that the madman, the lover, and the poet are all the same. They don't look at reality. They only rely on the imagination. And then, of course, the story goes on, and essentially, if you come down from the time of Shakespeare to the Romantic period, Jane Austen, you get increasingly into a realistic mode, but where you do find passion and love is more in the poetry, not so much in the fiction, in terms of classical literature. And then, after all, fine, this is not what life is all about. But aren't these kinds of works also essential? Because you need to believe in the possibility of this kind of love for life to become bearable and comfortable and happy for all of us. So, this kind of work also has some contribution to make.
Right, thank you. I was just thinking about how when I was a kid and I used to, I grew up with the movies of the 70s and 80s and 90s. And of course, then when the heroine and the hero decided to have some sexy time, you'd see these flowers sort of meeting and then these birds, you know, making out. I don't know how long the poor cameraman would have had to wait to capture that particular moment, but somehow they did. And then again with Jane Austen's novels, where these women would just sew and, you know, paint and sing and dance, and that's all they had to do. I grew up and I found out I was expected to work. So if you date someone, you marry someone, whatever, you continue to work. And I think to me, I'm so comfortable in gender roles that I think it wasn't so much romantic novels that ruined my perception of life as feminism. Because feminism really ruined it for me, you know. It's, if only I didn't have to work, if only I could sew and sit at home, my life would be so much better. So, but then now I want to speak to someone who did take time off to write a book, a man who quit working in order to work on a book. How do you think, you know, this flux in gender identity has affected our idea of romance? Because even in your novel, there's this actor who's going on about boobs and whatnot to his son, and his son finds him sexist. His wife doesn't say anything. It's the son who uses the word sexist. So how do you think gender identity has shaped romance?
Well, I was very clear. If I was going to take a year out of my life to write a novel, I certainly wasn't going to you know, stick to formula. And even though I was working in the ambit of commercial fiction, certainly I wanted to take all these notions and stereotypes of the man-woman and turn it on its head, so that you end up with a lot of, you know, to surprise, entertain the reader, and also make it's so, my novel is called Scandal Point, and it's a social satire about Bollywood and you know, what we call high society, Bombay, Delhi, and London. And in that world, I mean, essentially holding up a mirror to the kind of shenanigans of people who